Hello, I'm Arina Bolkas. Welcome to the Future of Learning. For a long time, in the traditional Western schooling, knowing the right answer was always expected, and most tests could be mastered by memorizing the information. We always knew what to expect. High school graduates knew that after college, they will get good jobs and make a great living. But a lot has really changed since those days when the world seemed so stable and predictable. Our children will encounter, most likely, a very different work environment and a very different life environment. It's not only about a state of their country anymore, but about the state of our entire world. What and how should they learn to be ready for the world? We invited two Clarkston parents who could share their views from somewhat different angles. Cathy Shaffron is an instructor at Oakland University who had an opportunity to teach in Israel. And Ramin Razdar, originally from Iran, is a senior manager at Magna International. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
When we hear about globalization, we often think right away business, work environment. However, before we get to work environment, there is also college. And this is something that's very important to many Clarkston students. So Cathy, from your perspective, what do you believe universities and colleges, and you as an instructor, looking in high school graduates right now, and why?
Well, of course, I can't speak to all of the instructors at universities everywhere, but I can speak to what I am seeing from students at Oakland University and also students that I am seeing moving on from high schools to the university level. And what I think is the greatest need amongst students that I am having in my class is to have them be critical thinkers. So what I mean by that is not just here are your assignments, read the book, do the worksheet. But what does that mean? When I give you those assignments, what does it mean? And this is applicable not just to journalism where I'm teaching, it's about engineers, it would be about students wanting to go into computer science or lawyers or cooks or mechanics. The question is not just what is this bolt, but how does it work in connection with the whole thing. So in journalism where I'm teaching, when we're learning about news, it's not just acceptable for me as a teacher to have the student be able to write a sentence clearly or to know what happened with ISIS overseas. It's how do I apply that knowledge to stories that I want to look at? How do I critically look at what is news and what is not news? How do I look at what is truth and not truth? And additionally, when I teach overseas, when I taught Israeli-Palestinian issues, to look at the two sides critically, to look at the news pertaining to that, what is truth? And oftentimes that only comes from taking a critical look beyond what is written and what is given to you and causing you to actually think beyond what is just there in black and white.
Absolutely. And obviously, probably the same set of expectations and skills would be important for a work environment, I believe, right? So Ramin, you work for a global company. 29 countries, that's where you have the operations. Certainly you know the global environment as far as business is concerned. So what do you believe are the important skills or character traits that will allow our students to succeed in the future?
Hi, thank you for having me in the show.
Absolutely.
The skills that is an enabler for currently and in the future for students are the skills math and sciences, very important, especially in automotive industry. We live in an information revolutionary age right now. And as Cathy mentioned, to be a critical thinker is very important, right? Just not, as you mentioned, memorizing answer to a problem and trying to write it down. It's really understand the application of that to the real world applications and so forth. And to be also successful in a global world, business world, it's very important to know how to be a team player and to work with over cross-cultural, cross-language, and cross-national organization, right?
Absolutely.
At Magna, we have projects that start in US, but we have teams in Europe, we have teams in India, teams in China. We all have to collaborate together. So it's very important to respect and try to understand the other cultures, and to basically draw strength from them and try to make the team as a whole a much more stronger team.
So pretty much look at advantages and their strengths rather than their drawbacks.
Correct.
And weaknesses.
Sure.
Absolutely. I was also thinking that the current stage of globalization has a very unique character, because it's not only about businesses anymore, but it's also about individuals who are trying to globalize and to find out how they fit into the global society. So they need to be able to collaborate globally. So Cathy, again, in your experience, especially the one teaching in Israel, how do you think the global society is different from a local or even national society? And what are the most important characteristics of this society, and why our children need to be connected to it now?
Well, I can talk to you about why I feel the experience we had is an important example of why it's important to be connected globally. But I want to talk first about like the bigger picture issue, not just my program, but you'll notice universities nationwide, Michigan State University has hundreds of study abroad programs. And the idea is to get students to start understanding areas beyond our own. Now, in the pictures that you're seeing now, you're seeing students that I had that learned to understand firsthand the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They had the firsthand opportunity to meet with Palestinians who felt they were being occupied by settlers moving in. They got a chance to meet with settlers, Israeli settlers, who felt they had to keep themselves armed on a regular basis because of that. They got a first-hand look at the rockets that were coming over from Gaza from Palestinians who felt that they were occupied, and what it felt like to live in a city where you were bombed on a constant basis and had to live in a bomb shelter. This is a children's playground bomb shelter where you see that they've adapted their lives to a daily feeling like this. What you get from these experiences, in a refugee camp here, what you get from these experiences is an understanding of the crisis that other countries are going through, the conflicts, and you understand the people, why they hate, why there's war, and why we as US citizens, why we need to get involved, what we need to do to help bring peace, what we need to do to help stabilize other parts of the world. And you can't really know things like that until you get some very first-hand experiences, and I think that's what helps make us a global learner, those types of things.
Okay, well, Ramin, you and your family lived in many places prior coming here to Clarkston. And first of all, can you please share some of those experiences, and also perhaps you can give some insight in what really makes a person fit in a global society? Was it important to succeed from this perspective?
Sure. When I first came to this country, went to school here, and I had to interact with Native Americans as well as people from around the world, actually, right? And looking back to when we used to work on a project back home, it kind of was a one-directional, and here we basically work on the same project, the same type of project. I heard, solutions, looking at the problem in a different angle. And that really made it more interesting, and as a whole, the solution that was provided was much more interesting solution. For how to become a contributing member of global society is basically, as I mentioned in the earlier question, we need to learn how to respect others' ideas and opinions, and draw strength from them rather than taking it apart, right? Because like in many businesses, there's not always a right answer. There's no black and white. It's always gray and different shades of gray. And the same applies for global interactions as well.
Absolutely. So on this show, we talk a lot about meaningful learning, and what kind of learning is meaningful for children today, for the future. Since you have two, right? One is already graduated, and one is still here, 2 sons. Which of those experiences, educational experiences that they had here in Clarkston, would you consider meaningful for their future or important?
Sure. Clarkson Schools actually offers a very good program both in class and outside the classroom. Our oldest son, Darian, he graduated last year, as you mentioned, but this year, and he's a freshman at U of M in Ann Arbor.
Okay.
And his experiences through his courses he was taking in the IB program with the teachers and so forth, and also with the clubs that he was involved with, National Honor Society, UNICEF Club, Drama Club, and also he got involved in many community activities. That really gave him a good perspective of different opinions, different ideas, and made him to be able to participate in community events. And our younger son, Cameron, who's a senior right now, he's active in many different aspects of different activities here. But his experience in CSM Tech and also in the Team Rush robotics team really made him a whole person. And I observed them and I observed what that team does, and Mrs. Hughes does a great job with the team, and the mentors that actually help, they really do a great job. And the people from that Team Rush, they actually can go get a job at any engineering company because they tackle the robotics project that they have is basically they tackle from planning stage to implementation stage to community outreach, and to describe their project and so forth. So it's been a great experience for my children, and I think overall student body, they benefited greatly from the programs that are being offered here in Clarkson.
Well, I can actually add to this because I was one of the judges during the Rush Regatta, and I was really impressed with the ability of the students to do the business presentation, explain what they did from any standpoint. So you're right.
I have 3 graduates from the program as well. So.
Okay.
So I'm on board with both of you as well.
So what do you think, what kind of learning is meaningful for the future, and what can perhaps schools do more in order to prepare our students?
I knew you were going to ask me that question, and I didn't know that I was quite prepared to ask it, so I thought I would check in with one of the graduates from Clarkston who went through the entire school system, my son, who's now, I can proudly say, working at the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C., looking at global issues. And I said to him, had you had a chance to go through the educational system again, what do you think was missing from a global perspective? And he said he wishes that he had language from an earlier age. He has found in all of his dealings, and I find as well because we travel a lot, that language not just as something to learn and repeat, but it opens up an understanding of other cultures.
Absolutely.
What we're talking about in the workplace as well.
Sure.
It gives you an understanding of where people are coming from in that context. He also wishes that there was a bit more diversity, or at least education about diversity in the school system. He says he knows that they talked about it a lot, but when you don't see it, when you only see the same types of people in front of you, you can't really expand your horizons as well as having some physical interaction in a diverse way. And also he felt that there needed to be a broader look at global discussions of news. Current affairs, discussions in whether it's an economics class or a math class, or education class, how other cultures teach education. He thinks that there needs to be a broader understanding of how people are doing things in other parts of the world, because although we like to think that we're the best in the United States and everything, there are many things that we can learn from other cultures.
So in essence, we need to bring the world into the school and let children experience it while they're still here. Well, thank you very much for taking your time and being here today. And from my own perspective, I would like to add that a global society is very different from a melting pot concept. Here in America, we are often expected to blend together and in essence become the same. Well, the global society calls for living together with deep differences. It calls for acceptance. And that's a good lesson to learn.